democracy, and others. My plea to those of you involved in these groups is to be open to allying yourselves with a larger oppositional movement. Maybe we could establish a separate committee made up of representatives from each of those groups to discuss such an allegiance. And so this alliance of organizations in each region might then adopt a plan, a bioregional action plan, for instance. The plan should positively answer this question: does the work we are doing confront power? Does the work we are doing dismantle, or at least begin to dismantle, the core institutions of industrial civilization that are assaulting the life systems of the planet? And these core institutions, remember, are primarily agriculture, energy such as oil, the electric grid, coal, nuclear, and extractive industries like mining, logging, and commercial fishing. The bioregional action plan would be the basis for the creation of an oppositional culture. Therefore, it must confront power in some way. It is my conviction that if your work is transition work or in creating alternatives, it must be allied with oppositional work in some way so that we can, 1, have a cohesive movement with many working parts, and 2, build a stronger community. Also, if you have the time and energy, groups or individuals can be regularly engaged in prisoner support. This means establishing ongoing correspondences with prisoners, keeping them connected to the outer world in whatever way is appropriate, and helping them in what ways you can. Additional work includes donating to legal defense, sending books, and attending trials. Fundraising should, of course, be another regular activity. Now, nothing I've been suggesting here is binding in any way. No two affinity groups or organizations will be the same. This is because each group will be made up of different people, each person having their own gifts, their own passions. Not to mention that the forces of civilization that are choking the life out of the planet look different in different places. And I think that's what will make this work enjoyable. Once we jettison the liberal model as the basis for action and we embrace a more radical model, our options for action become so much more varied. There's a lot of work to be done, and I hope we can do it side by side. Now, if there's one thing I've learned about organizing, something I've been doing for the past 3 years, it's that things usually happen organically. As much as we've tried to control things and predict the outcome of our decisions and our events that we organize, we can never escape the wildness of this world. There have been so many times that things have turned out differently than we expected, many times for the better, and it's fun to be a part of that wild process. And by now I've learned to embrace it and flow with it rather than try to suppress it or make it fit into a rigid structure. My point is that I'm not sure what this movement will look like, and I don't think any of us can be sure. But what I am sure of is that this should have been happening a long time ago. When I keep hearing scientists say over and over that yet again they've underestimated the severity and the speed at which climate change is progressing, I know that we're past the point of urgency. And when I bear witness to corporations and other institutions clinging to business as usual in the face of that, not to mention that corporations are not being held accountable for their sociopathic behavior and committing atrocities like these. Not to mention the fact that corporations basically control the world. When I think about that, I know that we are beyond the point of compromising or asking nicely. Now, there are many reasons why I'm here tonight, probably many more than I even know. But I think back to the elk and how I loved them and how I learned many things from them. They taught me a lot about life and death. And I think about the news that came to me recently of an elk herd near the place that I grew up, probably the same herd, on the run from further development, and hunters who more and more are shooting pregnant females and just leaving them for dead for I don't know why. But that's one reason I'm here. Another reason is the gray wolf. Another reason is the Iberian lynx. I'm here tonight because of each of those 120 species that were driven extinct today. And I'm here because of each creature within each one of those 120 species. Each creature with its own life, its own outrageously different way of experiencing this beautiful world that we all share. This life that was cut short by this culture. And I think about the remaining indigenous people of this world holding on as best they can to their traditional ways of life. For how much longer they can hold on, I don't know. Now, you must love something or else you wouldn't be here tonight. As Lierre Keith says, love is a verb. My plea to you tonight is to let that love be used in the defense of your beloved. So, thank you very much. And before we do a Q&A session, Hannah was going to say a couple words.
Well, thanks for that presentation. It was really powerful and helpful. I'm passing around a donation jar just to add the practical aspect to this. Right now, this is what funds these sorts of operations, so I encourage you to give from your heart and to give generously to these movements. I am sure you all are aware of this, but I also want to bring your attention to the proposed export terminal up at Cherry Point in Ferndale. And I just want to let you know that this is an immediate and local way that we can employ these principles. And I encourage you all to be active and join alongside of fertile ground and resources in our campaign, which will, my executive director just announced to staff today that we're stepping it up a notch. So I hope that that means a big notch. And I hope that you guys all will spread word and stay in touch and, you know, get on the email list so you can receive our action alerts. And on April 27th at the City Club, there's going to be a Democratic Society meeting. And Craig Cole will be defending Craig Cole and SSA Marine will be defending the export terminal. Matt Crow and Bob Ferris will be supporting our take on it. So if you guys could come, get as many people as you can. We'll probably be having some sign making parties here before for protesting. So yeah, stay in touch, get on the list, and we'll give you more details as they develop. Thanks.
I forgot to mention something earlier that Max told me about tonight, is that Fertile Grounds Cam and Max will both be heading down to on Friday, down to the Public Interest Environmental Law Conference in Eugene, Oregon, which is a international law conference of environmental lawyers, and they're speaking on a panel to lawyers and law students from all over the world. So it's a great honor that we got invited down there to do that. So it's not a public event. But
if you're in Eugene,
yeah.
stop by.
Can people come to it? I don't know.
Yeah.
They can. Okay.
Any questions? Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about one of your comments you talked about. I said corporations rule the world, I think. Mm-hmm. And of course, I mean, corporations sort of have personal rights, but they're really not people.
Right.
There are always people behind the corporations, which are really the power that you're referring to. So to what extent are you exploring the people behind the corporations who rule the world?
Well, I think each situation is circumstantial, and I mean, as you say, corporations, there are people behind all these actions, so I totally agree that there are people behind the Gulf oil spill and all these other corporate atrocities, the Bhopal incident in India. How I see corporations as, they're basically sociopathic institutions. These people are rewarded for sociopathic behavior once they get into these institutions. And so what I'm more interested first, before I look at the people in these institutions, is the anti-corporate personhood work, because that's something that's come up recently that I just learned about that's very hopeful, and it seeks to sort of take that power away from under them, which means you don't really have to focus on the people, because if you can take away corporate personhood, that means they don't have as many rights. That means sociopathic behavior is not as rewarded, and they don't have as much power to do these things, like dump oil in the Gulf, and Tony Hayward, you know, loses his job and receives $1 million severance package, you know.
I'm not really talking about the people who are say, functioning within the corporation.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking more about the people behind the corporations, the ownership of it. The corporations do what the people who own them tell them to do.
Right.
And of course, there's a tremendous concentration of power and wealth among, a fairly small organization, group of people.
Yeah.
The oligarchy group. Let's say.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if your group is aware of that concentration of power, if you focused on who those people are, what they're doing, because a lot of these global decisions are made among really a fairly small.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Are you aware of the organizations that function to that extent?
Yeah. I mean,
for example, the Council of Farmers.
Okay. I guess not. I mean, maybe you're talking more about, you're not talking about BP or Shell.
Well, I'm talking about the people who own, for example, BP. We're more like
Okay.
Exxon,
Okay.
Mobil.
I'm totally aware that there are those upper branches, and
You might be wise to look into that a little bit more. In particular, there's
Okay.
a new book called Psychological Warfare that you may be interested
Okay.
in.
Well, thank you.
And Dylan, some people that I've talked to recently are very convinced that technology is going to be able to prevent the kind of disasters that we're faced with every day.
Yeah.
And for instance, they believe that we'll get a spaceship that will take us to another planet, stuff like that. And so it's easy for them to ignore the consequences of both their own actions and the imperative to be engaged politically, like you said.
Yeah.
What's a good way to respond to those type of positions?
In my experience, the people who use technology as a vehicle for getting out of these problems we face usually come from very privileged people. They're not at the other end of the industrial infrastructure that brings us the technology that we have today. And so they don't have to suffer because of it. Technology is benefiting them, and so it's sort of like they're just taking that to this conclusion that somehow we're going to go to Mars, or even just the more realistic ones, like the things I mentioned on the presentation, biotech and putting sulfur into the atmosphere and stuff like that, which I haven't honestly explored in large enough detail, but I just don't have a lot of, it's a faith issue, and I do not have faith in technology. I think, I'm going to go on a little spiel here, because I think there's more than one path of technology. When we talk about technology, often we think of, cell phones, laptops, and all those other things, but I deeply believe that, the Yanomami have their own technology, and it's not just bows and arrows. They have, of the indigenous people that I've learned that are still intact, they have some amazing communal infrastructures that are more like land management plans. These technologies that allow tribes in Russia to know that a herd of caribou is 3 valleys over, that they can't even see, and it's like, there are technologies that allow you to live in place for generations, and there's technologies that facilitate resource extraction and expansion. And I truly believe that the technologies that we have today, cell phones, laptops, when we think that they're for our benefit, what we're forgetting is that business and the military use these technologies far more effectively than we ever can. And the convenience that we get from them are just a byproduct. So as long as there's this pyramid scheme where those in power decide what technologies to produce and how they get distributed, maintaining their power, expanding, colonization will always be their initiative, and that's what I believe. So I don't know if that answered your question very well. Any others?
I don't think that environmental solutions are going to come about because of the values held by the bright green movement. And we just had a very interesting human rights film festival here, which just ended on the weekend. And the festival closed with a film called Cultures of Resistance, which is a film that I actually found rather dissatisfying, but it did raise the issue of violence and the appropriateness of violence, or more active resistance than was suggested by most of the other films. I'm excited by the radical nature of your approach, and